We've done this before. In season 1 of Debate Arena, we focus on sports, a topic that brings together many Ghanaian youth. But as we draw closer to the December general elections, the future of Ghana hangs in the balance. And it's been said that the voices that would matter the most would be the young, vibrant, and passionate Ghanaians who would cast their votes. So this season of Debate Arena, we are bringing together courageous and informed youth to debate the critical issues that will define Ghana's next chapter. Now, our debaters aren't just arguing for points. They are fighting for their affiliated parties, and they will try to tell you why you should vote for those respective parties. This season, it's more than just a debate. It's a call to action. It's a reminder that you have the power to determine Ghana's next leader and shape its destiny. Join the conversation, engage with the issues, and make your voice heard on social with the hashtag DebateArenaPE.
Hello, Kwesi. I'm excited to meet you. And it is important that as young people, we are involved in the political process. And forum like this that give us the opportunity to express our minds must be encouraged. And so for me, it's a good opportunity for me to contribute to a national discussion, especially because corruption is a very key issue that drives voters. And that is very important to a democracy. And so I'm looking forward to a healthy intellectual discourse. I just hope that we would elevate the discourse beyond the often cacophonous party banter, make it fact-driven, progressive as well, and at the end of the day, make it informed for everybody who is going to watch us.
Thank you very much. I'm very glad to be here, and it's good to meet you. And I agree that as young people, it's important that we add our voices to the national discourse. Corruption is a very serious matter. In fact, if you look at other African countries, most of the other African countries that are underdeveloped, one of their major problems is corruption, because corruption goes to the center of every governance system or architecture. And so it's important that as young people, we add our voices to it and discuss how best we can eradicate corruption from our body politics and our governance architecture. And so I'm glad to be here. I'm expecting a fruitful discussion. I'm expecting an intellectual discussion, like you said. And of course, we are here to represent our political parties. And so you expect, slight political banters. But then, I expect it to be very fruitful and very interesting and very educative. Yeah.
John Dramani Mahama's governance has addressed the issue of corruption better than Akufo-Addo's government. Do you agree or disagree?
Corruption is a very important national subject. And like we have already said in our introduction, it's at the center of our democracy. It's at the center of our democracy because if we eradicate corruption, it has the potential of increasing resources that is available for national development. And the occurrence of corruption at its endemic levels impairs national development, stifles budget. In some quarters, it's described as structured violence because it is because of corruption, right? Inflated budgets, lack of accountability, and siphoning money from our public purse. That is why school children in, say, Axim would not have a school building to be able to school in. It is because of corruption. That is why children in Bompurugu, somewhere in the north, will go to bed on an empty stomach. And there cannot be any form of violence more than that. So corruption is at the center of our political discourse. And as we are in an election year, it is important that we place it at the center of the discussion and see what, first of all, the parties, their track record is in terms of the fight against corruption. Now, we have been asked to evaluate the motion whether John Dramani Mahama's administration addressed and fought corruption better than the Akufo-Addo Bawumia administration. I do not think that this is a controversial matter that should be debatable at all. I personally think that, and I would support it with the relevant evidence and facts, I personally think that this is the most corrupt regime. The Akufo-Addo Bawumia government is the most corrupt regime ever. And the most corrupt regime ever cannot be said to be, a better regime in terms of the fight against corruption than the erstwhile John Dramani Mahama's government. And in this debate, I'm going to do 4 things. First, establish why this regime is the most corrupt regime ever by showing you the corruption indices. 2, talk about why we are here, why we are in the current status quo of corruption. 3, I would make an anecdote on some of the corruption scandals that have led us to this point and how those monies should have been channeled into productive ventures in our economy. And 4, look at the twin pillars of 1, legislative and institutional architecture that helps to combat corruption, and 2, personal commitment from leadership. And these are the 2 pillars that are essential for the fight against corruption. So we'll do a comparative analysis on how both regimes have fought corruption based on those 2 indices. And the point we are making is that, first of all, if you analyze corruption as a factor of governance or our democracy in the John Dramani Mahama-led administration as against what we see in the Akufo-Addo Bawumia administration, the Akufo-Addo Bawumia administration is the worst, not only in this 4th Republic, but in the entire history of our country. And the evidence abounds. First point, the global index for measuring corruption over the years since 1995 has been the Corruption Perception Index. Indeed, Ghana entered the chart in 2012. And since 2012, the Transparency International has been ranking countries all over the world, including Ghana, on how our public institutions and our governance is combating corruption from the viewpoint of business analysts, from politicians, and from media, all right? Now, in 2012, when we entered the chart, our score was 45, all right? The worst under President Mahama was in 2016, which was a score of 43. And this is how the Corruption Perception Index works. It is from 0 to 100, okay? As you approach 0, which is the least, then there is, least, how do I call it? High levels of corruption. And as you approach 100, then it means that there's lower levels of corruption. So in 2014, President Mahama achieved a score of 48, which has been the highest ever that our country has ever seen. In 2014, he achieved a score of 48, the highest ever our country has ever seen. In 2016, he achieved a score of 43, which was the lowest in his administration. Now, fast forward between 2017 and 2023, we have seen significant decline in our performance on the Corruption Perception Index. Indeed, the Akufo-Addo Bawumia score of 43, which they have maintained over the past 3 years, which is their best score, is actually President Mahama's worst, which is an indication that in terms of corruption and its prevalence, even on international rankings, President Mahama and his administration stand tall. A second point in support of this is the Afrobarometer, index. The Afrobarometer is a Pan-African independent survey or research, political research, that seeks to survey the continent on certain political, social, and economic issues. And at the last count in their 2024 survey, it was reckoned that corruption, 77% of Ghanaians say corruption has increased, and it's increased year on year. This is in sharp contrast, and it's actually double of the rate that we saw in 2017 when this government took over. When this government took over, the Afrobarometer report said that corruption was at 36. Now it is at 27. And indeed, as a result of this, most people are losing faith in our democracy. And about 85% of Ghanaians think that in terms of our fight against corruption, we are headed in the wrong direction, all right? Now, there are a lot of anecdotes from CSOs and organizations that corroborate this point. For example, in November 2023, the Catholic Bishop Conference, at a press conference, said that there is massive and uncontrolled levels of corruption, which has become the order of the day in this Akufo-Addo Bawumia regime. But we see all of these indices because of 4 main points. First, that Akufo-Addo and Bawumia themselves are ensconced in the corruption, all right? And so because it is rotten from the head, we will never be able to control it in this government because we know Akufo-Addo's deep involvement in the Ameri Innovation deal, where the government sought to renegotiate a $510 million deal, Ameri deal that Mahama had entered into, which was a power purchase agreement. They sought to renegotiate it down, and they actually ended at $1.3 billion. When civil society, parliamentary oversight, flagged it up, the president's response is that he was misled. We also know of the involvement of Bawumia's office in reducing, the demand guarantee and letters of credit in the PDS scandal to a lesser guarantee, which is an insurance guarantee, so that the deal can go through. So they themselves are ensconced in it. The second point too is that President Akufo-Addo and Bawumia are actively fighting against all anti-corruption institutions. Remember the removal of Domelevo because he dared touch the finance minister, who is his cousin, all right, which the Supreme Court says is unconstitutional. We know what happened to Martin Amidu and what is happening to Kisi Ejaben currently, who all are lambasting how the Office of the Special Prosecutor has been weakened by consistent interference by President Akufo-Addo. But underlining all of this is also systemic nepotism and cronyism. At the last reckoning, about 52 persons, high level, are involved, are directly related to the president or people in high level. And what this does is that, you see, because as president or as a political authority, you have the responsibility to rein people in. It's important that you get people that you'll be able to control. And when you surround yourselves with friends, families, and relatives, what happens is that you are unable to rein them in, and these people are emboldened to go on siphoning our monies. And so corruption has been at an all-time high because of some of these. And there are a number of scandals which I would go into. I'll make an anecdote of it and open them up as to how they have deprived us of key resources that could have been used for our development and how a few have enriched themselves. Because of these factors that I have mentioned, we currently have the most corrupt regime in installment. And the way out of it as citizens is to make sure that we see the back of this government, all right? We see the back of this government and reintroduce a government that has demonstrated commitment to the fight against corruption. The Auditor General says that sole sourcing has become the order of the day. And at the last performance audit report on cocoa construction, about 87 of these cocoa routes have been awarded to sole sourcing. This is in sharp contrast to President Akufo-Addo's own commitment on 23rd August 2016, when he was campaigning to be president, where he said that sole sourcing was going to be a thing of the past when he comes into government, all right? 11.32 billion in 2023 alone was lost to financial irregularity, according to the Auditor General. And in 2022 was even worse. All of these are evidence of the fact that when it comes to the fight against corruption, this government has totally lost it. And in the second round, I'll demonstrate how President Mahama's government were on top of corruption, fought corruption, and are better managers of the canker of corruption as far as our democracy is concerned.
All right, thank you very much. And I think that corruption is a very complex issue. And I appreciate all the things you've said, but I thought you said we were going to move away from the normal propaganda and then stick with facts. But it's rather unfortunate that you decided to delve into more propaganda than stay with the facts. But I mean, that's fair. I will start by saying that in 2008, the NDC in their manifesto at page 24 stated or provided categorically that when they are voted for into power in 2008, then, let me quote. So page 24 says that the next NDC government will not make any excuse for corrupt officials, office holders, and officials. They added that they would make corruption a high-risk activity for political office holders. What did we see between 2008 and 2016? We saw a government that was meddling in corruption, including the president himself. In fact, in the history of this country, John Mahama is the only vice president who has been tagged with corruption. Remember the Amajaro scandal, where international newspapers reported that our vice president has received over $150,000 by way of bribe. You remember the Umbrella 190 scandal. You referred to Martin Amidu, your then Attorney General. He came to tell Ghanaians that John Mahama had received bribe in the Amajaro scandal, the Umbrella 190 scandal. And so when we talk about corruption, clearly the NDC doesn't have any clear-cut policy for fighting corruption because they themselves are embedded in corruption. And in fact, the NDC is well noted for corrupt activities. All what they do when they are in opposition is to shout that the incumbent government is engaging in corruption, and when we come, we are going to arrest them and do all sort of things. But in 2008, they made similar allegations. In 2007, they made similar allegations. When they won in 2008, not even a single MPP appointee was convicted or prosecuted for corruption. Between 2008 and 2016, not even a single MPP appointee was convicted for corruption. But when we came into power, when the MPP assumed office in 2017, whilst we were touring, we told the Ghanaian people that when we come to power, we're going to arrest and prosecute all officials of the erstwhile administration that has engaged in corruption. And so far, we have been able to prosecute and convict over 23 former appointees of the John Mahama administration. I'll mention just a few. We all remember the NCA scandal, when the NCA led by Eugene Bafuboni informed Ghanaians that they were going to purchase listening devices at the National Communications Authority. That was to cost Ghanaians a whooping amount of $4 million. After the time they were going to purchase these machines, Ghanaians were sleeping in dooms of total darkness. There was a freeze on the public sector. Nothing was moving in this country, yet they were insensitive enough to dedicate $4 million to purchase listening devices at the NCA's secretariat. Interestingly, when the monies were released by the Ministry of Finance, the officials or the departmental heads of NCA squandered the money. The machines never came. Currently, Eugene Bafuboni, the then Chief Executive or Director General, Matthew Teve, the board chairman, Osman Suleimana, who was the then Deputy National Security Coordinator and a member of the NCA board, and a host of them have been jailed and currently serving their jail term at Nsawam. Recently, we all heard of the Maslock case. Sedinam Temaklo, a female who was entrusted with 93 million cedis belonging to the ordinary trader, was convicted for squandering all the monies. We all remember the Circle fire victims. Monies that were given to Sedinam Temaklo to be given to these victims weren't given to the victims, but the woman squandered all this money. And Sedinam Temaklo was appointed by the former president. And so when we are talking about corruption, I believe that we have to develop a holistic approach in fighting corruption rather than apportioning blames and engaging in unnecessary name calling amongst ourselves. Because when it comes to the most corrupt political party in this country, it is the NDC and nobody comes close to it. Because we all remember the bus branding scandal, we all remember the SADA scandal, we all remember the 25 million euros Waterville scandal, we all remember the 30 million euro group scandal that Martin Amidu came to tell us that the 30 million EU group money that was meant for corporate social responsibility were diverted into the former president's account. I'm not the one saying it. Martin Amidu was the one who said it. And I mean a host of scandals that occurred under your tenure, missing gold, missing oil, funds, the scandal at the Standards Authority, the venture capital scandal. And interestingly, the former CEO for venture capital has been convicted for corruption, Daniel Duku. And when he got convicted, he told the court that he was willing to refund all 42.8 million Ghana cedis. And within 2 weeks, Daniel Duku, a former appointee of John Dramani Mahama, was able to refund the 42 million Ghana cedis he stole from venture capital. Isn't it interesting that a Ghanaian citizen has 42 million Ghana cedis under his bed, and Daniel Duku had that money under his bed? And so when it comes to the matters of corruption, it is clear that it is the NPP you can trust. Because all the things my brother has said are mere allegations. I have mentioned to you instances of corruption scandals that have gone to court and the courts have convicted the perpetrators. If you believe you have credible evidence, put out your evidence. I will not come and sit here and engage in propaganda and say, Mahama did this, Mahama did that. I am giving you cases and instances that have gone to court. All the things I've mentioned are matters that have been to court, and the court has adjudicated on all those matters. And so, when it comes to corruption, I believe that it's a serious problem. And that sometimes we need to put away our political affiliations if indeed we want to fight corruption. Because I agree that usually it's most of politically exposed persons that are involved in corruption. But as a government and as a party, I believe that the NPP has done well in managing corruption. We all remember the Manasseh Azuri expose on PPA, the Public Procurement Authority. The president quickly referred the matter to the CID for investigation. The CID completed in its investigation, referred the docket to the AG's department. Currently, the PPA boss, who was appointed by President Akufo-Addo, is under trial. His accounts have been frozen, his passports have been seized, and all those things. And so, when it comes to corruption, the President Akufo-Addo and Dr. Bawumia has exhibited the commitment and the zeal in fighting corruption. In fact, my colleague mentioned the PDS scandal. There is no proof or whatsoever that the PDS scandal was cooked or, like he said, was cooked at the office of the vice president. There is absolutely no evidence to substantiate those claims. These are mere allegations and whatsoever. On the matter of until today, I never knew that renegotiation of power purchase agreement amounts to corruption. I never knew that. What is the corrupt element associated in the renegotiation of the power purchase agreement you refer to? I do not think that there has been any substantiated fact or proven evidence that there was any corruption or corrupt activities associated to what you mentioned. Now, on the Ken Ofori-Atta incident, you mentioned that anytime people stand up to fight corruption, they get antagonized by this government, and you mentioned Dom Levo. I mean, you're a student of law. You know that Dom Levo was not relieved of his position because of that. The person had retired. In fact, his days for serving the Ghanaian people had expired. And there are so many competent people more than Dom Levo. Is Dom Levo the only person in this country who can be the Auditor General? Sometimes, you see, let's not mislead Ghanaians when we get opportunity. Where in President Akufo-Addo's letter, or who has said that because Dom Levo was chasing Ken Ofori-Atta for stolen monies, that is why he was sacked. It is not true. Let's not engage in falsehoods and unnecessary name calling. We are young people. Let's not add that to our body politics. Let's stick to the facts and be sacrosanct with the facts. Because sometimes, you see, matters of corruption are sensitive matters. And that is why I'm choosing my words very carefully. I do not want to say things that do not exist. I do not want to blame people for things they have not done. I agree that if you have any evidence that members of the President Akufo-Addo administration have been engaged in corruption, my brother, bring out the evidence. I will partner with you. We'll write a petition to the state agencies, and then it will be taken from there. In fact, one of the greatest commitments of President Akufo-Addo in fighting corruption is the implementation of the RTI bill. In 2008, the NDC promised us that when voted for into power, they were going to make sure that the RTI, or the Right to Information Act, was enacted. They failed to do that. Interestingly, in their 2024 manifesto, they are promising Ghanaians again that when they come, they are going to make proper amendments to the RTI enactment. Something you failed to enact, you are now promising an amendment. But this government has enacted the Right to Information Act. We promised to set up the Office of the Special Prosecutor. We have set up the Office of the Special Prosecutor, which is currently running. And so, in summary, the whole point I want to make is that corruption is a very sensitive matter associated with corruption. And let's not also forget that, as I conclude, it is not only politicians who are engaged in corruption. When you go to the business circles, corruption do exist there. When you go to the private sector, there is corruption. Even here at TV3, there is corruption. And so corruption is a social canker that we must all look at, holistically and address it.
We see, you say that there is corruption in other sectors of national life apart from the public sector. I agree. But the difference is that the corruption at TV3 here does not affect the child in Bumprugu. The difference is that when in your family, all right, you decide to pilfer your mother's money, it is a private matter, and it does not, even though it's an unethical matter, its consequences are not national. So that's the first point about corruption in other sectors compared to government corruption where our taxpayers' monies are being siphoned. The second point is that you said that Mary Novation deal did not evince any instance of corruption. When you say a deal is 510 million and that it is high, it is bloated by about 100 million, and you want to renegotiate it, and you end up ballooning it to 1.3 million, it cannot be that there is no evidence of corruption. You are bloating the contract because you would want to, gain from that renegotiation. And then, again, a few matters on Martin Amidu saying that a Amajaro deal involves payment of bribe to the former vice president. If you remember, these matters were put to him when he was being interviewed or being vetted in Parliament for the office of the Special Prosecutor. What he told Parliament, which is on record, that all of this is perception and that people perceived that President Mahama and the administration was corrupt. He couldn't, adduce any scintilla of evidence in support of all of the things that previously he has said. However, when it came to President Akufo-Addo, when he worked with him for a few months, he said that President Akufo-Addo is the mother serpent of corruption and cited instances of interference in his work, which is on record, and he had to bolt with his tail in between his legs from the mother serpent of corruption. So that is President Akufo-Addo and Bawumia relative to President Mahama. But you see, to conclude, there are two important, and we need to look forward in terms of battling corruption, and there are two important pillars. One is to provide an institutional architecture that makes it difficult for people to steal public funds, and which also constitutes an architecture to prevent and punish corruption. So that's the one. And then two, political commitments, so that when your own appointees have engaged in act of corruption, you can refer them to investigative bodies to punish. Now, if you look at these two pillars and you compare President Mahama and Akufo-Addo and Bawumia, it is President Mahama's comparison. If you look at Akufo-Addo's conduct.
Name one simple architecture that President Mahama established to combat corruption. Just one.
I'm happy you're asking questions now. First of all, President Mahama passed a raft of legislations meant to provide robust financial and public management system and accountability. So it was under his regime that the Public Financial Management Act was passed. Under his regime, he amended the Anti-Money Laundering Act and provided for what is called accountable institutions. Now, these accountable institutions were designated to track proceeds of corruption and proceeds of crime. One of these institutions are lawyers. And so when lawyers are engaging clients, they are mandated by law to be able to track this. Apart from that, he also introduced a payroll modernization, where he introduced the GIFMIS, the Ghana Integrated Financial Management Information System, which was supposed to combat ghost names on the payroll. But in 2014, President Mahama also launched the National Anti-Corruption Action Plan. The National Anti-Corruption Action Plan was a framework supposed to deal with corruption as it relates within the public sector and providing ethical guidelines as to how public officials must conduct themselves. The idea was for us to deal with corruption in a sustainable manner over a 10-year period, okay? And so in 2024, all right, in its 10th year, we are supposed to see the fruit of that National Anti-Corruption Action Plan manifesting. Unfortunately, it is this year that our corruption perception index and all of that is plummeting because of consistent and endemic levels of corruption. Now, when it also comes to personal commitment to fight corruption, because the institutions themselves cannot do creating the legislation institutions themselves may not be enough. You need personal commitment and a political will to be able to enforce this. All right? When it comes to personal commitment, President Mahama is the one on record to have prosecuted his own appointees. And you are talking about post-regime accountability. That is so easy to do. To have your Attorney General frame charges, take them to court, and get the court to convict. That's so easy to do. What is important is to deal with corruption as it is happening. And that's what President Mahama did. In the JIDA scandal, he ordered investigation into the affairs of JIDA that led to the prosecution of his own MP, Abuga Pele, MP for Pagachiana. All right. Ironically, President Akufo-Addo granted him pardon. All right, in 2021. It was a very uncomfortable decision for President Mahama, but he had a political commitment to punish his own appointees. Okay. Now, in November 2013, Victoria Hammer, Deputy Communication Minister, was heard on audio, okay, in an informal conversation, speaking to her friends that she would stay in politics until she makes $1 million. She didn't actually have that $1 million. She was heard on tape to be saying that. That audio alone appalled President Mahama enough that on 28 November 2013, he dismissed Victoria Hammer as Deputy Communication Minister. That is President Mahama for you. When actual $1 million, together with other currencies, were found under the bed of Cecilia Dapa, who is Akufo-Addo and Baomia's sanitation minister, even before investigation commenced, the minister had to resign. And the letter that Akufo-Addo wrote to the minister was to, assure her that she believed in her, essentially stampeding, anti-corruption investigation, because he's the first gentleman of the land and the head of the national security and commander-in-chief of the armed forces is sort of exonerating the person who is yet to be investigated. That is so prejudicial to the work of the anti-corruption agency. So when it comes to legislations, when it comes to institutions, President Mahama stands tall. When it comes to political commitment, he demonstrated it in his administration. And that is why he has, come up with a number of policies that moving forward in the next 4 years, he would implement to combat corruption. As against the Baomia's silence on corruption when it comes to his manifesto.
Clearly, if you look at the NPP manifesto, we have set out that we are going to use digitization to fight corruption. The NPP is concerned about preventing corruption than waiting for the corruption to happen before we come and talk plenty about it. So Dr. Baomia's commitment in fighting corruption is paramount to him. In fact, it is very important.
Where is this in the manifesto?
And in fact, it is very important to state that Dr. Baomia is not a corrupt vice president.
Okay, see,
Dr. Baomia
when you ask me a question,
never engaged. I'll answer your question.
Where
Dr. Baomia has never engaged in corruption. Dr. Baomia has not appointed anybody to steal our 93 million Ghana cedis meant for poor traders at Makwala, Circle, Nima, and Mamobi. But John Mahama has appointed Sedinam Temaklo, who stole our 93 million Ghana cedis to talk about corruption. If you want Ghanaians to trust you and your Women's Development Bank, go and bring Sedinam Temaklo to refund the 93 million cedis he stole from the Ghanaian people, the poor Ghanaian. But for Sedinam Temaklo, I never knew any woman would have the courage to steal 93 million Ghana cedis. Do you know what 93 million Ghana cedis can do for the community you mentioned at Tripoli? It can build about 1,500 chip compounds and build over 20 e-blocks for that community. But one woman who was appointed by your flag bearer that today you are preaching that Ghanaians should vote for stole that money and nobody spoke anything about it. It took the intervention of Godfrey Dame to institute criminal charges against Madam Sedinam Temaklo, and today she has been convicted for 10 years, and even with that she's nowhere to be found because John Mahama is even hiding her, because the former GMPC boss who worked closely with Mahama was the one who signed the bail bond for Madam Sedinam Temaklo. And so when we are talking about corruption and corruption-related offenses and the political party that is engaged and embedded and sleeping in corruption and breeding corruption, clearly it's the National Democratic Congress that is breeding corruption.
Two questions. First of all, where was the PDS deal negotiated? Who supervised over it?
Where was the PDS deal negotiated?
Yes.
Every deal per law, you are a student of law, you know that every deal at the negotiation stage goes to the Attorney General's department. I mean, it is a provision of, as part of the Public Management Act, Financial Management Act. That is the sole, within the sole purview of the Attorney General. Yes. And no other person. No other person has the right to negotiate deals on behalf of the Republic of Ghana, with the exception of the Attorney General.
You are very much aware that the PDS scandal, the one who gave authorization for some of the condition precedent to be watered down to conditions subsequent, is Vice President Alhaji Baumia. It happened in his office. Second question. Final question. Let me ask the question.
No. Are you saying it happened in his office or he was the one who said? These are two different things. What exactly are you saying?
It happened under him. He is the one that gave the authorization.
It is not true.
It is not true.
Where is your proof? It is not true.
Okay. Now, let me ask the second question. Where in the NPP manifesto are policies captured to fight corruption? Where?
I'm getting you the exact page. I'm getting you the exact page of there.
Because I actually know the NPP manifesto.
No, I'm getting you the exact page of there.
Corruption was mentioned 3 times.
I'm getting you the exact page.
And all of them were anecdotes.
No
commitment to corruption.
Go and look at the NPP manifesto, the segment that talks about corruption.
Clearly,
Dr.
Talks
Bawumia
about corruption.
has outlined,
unlike your 2016 manifesto that had a whole chapter.
Several processes we are going to
corruption.
use to fight corruption. Go and bring the 93 million Ghana cedis Madam said in Temakulo stole.
So, in conclusion, I have enjoyed myself in this debate. I expected that we will elevate the conversation beyond the partisan platitudes, but PC engaged me on that level, and I'm not really that kind of mainstream party communicator that would ordinarily engage on that. Every single thing I said was backed by fact. He threw in allegations and all of that. Every single thing I said, I pointed to a report. I pointed to something that you can verify. But on the overall, I have enjoyed the conversation. I think that we must continue to have a discourse on corruption so that we enrich the conversation as we approach election 2024. My final words will be that if we ever get any administration that comes close, okay, a quarter to the kind of corruption and financial malfeasance that this government has plunged us into, this republic will be forever doomed.
All right, so my brother here says that he is not an NDC communicator, but he's there to represent the NDC and speak for the NDC. If you listen to clearly all the things he has said, he's speaking on behalf of the National Democratic Congress, and clearly we are here to do politics. And all the things I have said, I haven't spoken anything ill about anybody. I haven't lied against anybody. I haven't peddled any unfounded allegations. All the things I have said is true. What have I said here that is not accurate? Is it true or not true that Sednam Temaklo has stolen our 93 million Ghana cedis? That is very true. Is it true or not true that NCA under John Mahama embezzled $4 million belonging to the Ghanaian people as at a time where young people like you and I had no work to do because there was a freeze on our public sector, as at the time that our mothers were sleeping in doom, so as at the time that our young colleagues were using lighters to do their homeworks and what have you. And so clearly, if you want any political administration that has caused this government a lot by way of corruption, it is the National Democratic Congress led by their defeated and coming again flag bearer.